In this video, I'll be going over our notes for adding and subtracting integers. What is an integer? An integer is a whole valued number with no fractional parts or decimal parts that is either positive, negative, or zero. Positive numbers are on the number line to the right of zero. Zero is considered neutral, so it's not negative or positive. And negative numbers would be on the number line to the left of zero. So we have a number line down here. 0 is considered neutral, right here in the center. Anything to the right are positive numbers, and anything to the left would be considered negative numbers. When we think of integers, we just said that they need to be whole valued numbers and not fractional parts. So an example of an integer could be -7, could be 8, could be 1, could be 0. Non-examples of integers could be something like 1/2, a fraction, or 0 and 3/10, which is part of a number. So it's only 3/10 of the number. Or -7 and 1/10. So these would all be non-examples because they have fractional or decimal parts. When there is not a sign written with a number, we know that it will be positive. So for example, if we see this number, we just read it as the number 4, and we know that it's positive. So I'm showing you this because we never really see it as like +4, but there's always an implied positive symbol there when we just see a 4. However, when we're talking about negative numbers, if there's a negative sign written with a number, then it is negative. So as you can see down below, when we see this -4 symbol, so a -4, we say -4. And it means it's a negative number. So a lot of people, when they first start learning about this, think that it's a minus sign, but we can call it a negative number. And now we know that it is one of our integers. So we're going to describe a couple integers down here, and I want you to try to guess and see what those numbers would be. So if I say that you earn $30, is that adding or subtracting that amount of money from your bank account? Well, if you earn it, then you're getting more money, which means you'd have positive 30. If you are descending 256 feet, descending means you move down. So that means that your elevation is changing in a negative way, meaning it's getting smaller. So you had negative 256 feet there. If you lost one pencil, you didn't gain a pencil, so you don't have +1, you have -1. If you gain 4 pounds, then your weight will be 4 pounds larger than it was, meaning you had +4. If you are 32 degrees Fahrenheit below zero, then you are freezing, so you have -32. If it's below zero, we talked about being left or right on the number line, but we could even draw a vertical number line where we have 0 and all the negative numbers are below 0, all the positive numbers are above. And then sea level. Sea level would be considered our 0 value. So it's neutral, so it's kind of right at the level of where the sea meets the air, right? So we call that 0. So we're going to practice with adding integers. So you already know how to add two numbers that are positive. When we talk about adding negative numbers with that, the rules get a little bit different. So we have to think about, well, are the signs the same or are all their signs different? So if the signs are the same, let's focus on that first. You'll just find the sum, which means we add, and keep the sign of both integers. So looking at our examples down below, keeping the signs the same, I can see this is +4 and +8. In this problem, I have -4 and -8. In -4 and 8, and 4 and -8. So my first two examples are when I have the signs that are the same. So all I have to do is just add the sum, find the sum, and then keep the sign of the integers. So I think about it as 4 plus 8. Well, 4 plus 8 is 12, and they were both positive, so my answer is just +12. When I think about this one where I have -4 plus -8, I'm just going to ignore the signs. Think about 4 plus 8. Well, I know that's 12. But I'm going to keep the sign of both integers because the signs were the same. That means I really have -12. So if we want to think about that on the number line, we would start at -4, and we're adding -8, meaning we are making this get smaller because we're going further negative. We're putting more negative things with this number. So I need to count backwards 8 spaces. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. My number line's a little off here, so I would fill this in as -11, and I end up at -12. So this was me adding my -8 to my -4, and I landed on -12. So you can either use this rule that we had where you add the numbers and keep the sign, or if the number line helps you think about where it's going, whether it's getting negative or positive, then that might help you. If the signs are different, so this is our other scenario. When the signs are different, find the difference, so remember difference means subtraction, then keep the sign of the number with the greatest absolute value. So we want to think about this problem down here. Negative 4 and 8 are different sign numbers because negative 4 is negative and 8 is a positive. So what I'm going to do is find their difference. So the difference between 8 and 4 is 4. So that's my difference. But then I need to keep the sign of the number with the greatest absolute value. So when I think about that, negative 4, well, the absolute value of negative 4 is 4. And the absolute value of 8 is 8. Which absolute value is bigger? 8 is a bigger number, so that means that we are taking the sign from the 8. The 8 was positive, therefore my final answer is just going to be positive 4. In my next problem, my signs are different again. I have positive 4 and negative 8. So I'm going to do the same process. I'm going to first find their difference. So if I just ignore the signs and think about 8 and 4 and find their difference, that's 4 away. So I know I'm going to be dealing with a 4. But now I need to decide, is it a positive 4 or a negative 4? The absolute value of 4 is just 4, and the absolute value of negative 8 is 8. So 8 is that larger number there. The absolute value of negative 8 was larger than the absolute value of 4. So that means I need to take the sign from this number. And the sign of that number was negative. So that means for my final answer, I will have negative 4 as my solution. So for this one on the number line, if we want to think about that, we would have started at 4, and then it says we're adding negative 8. Well, if we add a negative, it's going to get smaller. It's going to go more negative. So I'm going to count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 spaces to the left. So I'm adding negative 8 to it again. But this time I ended up on negative 4. And that followed with our rule that we saw. So you can either use the rules up above or use the number line to help you count. When we talk about subtracting integers, subtraction is where it gets a little bit trickier. But addition, if we can master addition, then subtraction can be rewritten as addition, which helps our problems go a little bit smoother. So subtraction would be the same as adding the opposite of the second integer. So in symbols, that would look like if I had a number a minus a number b, I could rewrite it as a plus the opposite of b. So let's look at it with that an example. If I want to rewrite negative 3 minus negative 2, I'm going to keep my first integer the same, and instead of using subtraction, I'm going to add, but if I'm going to add, I need to take the opposite of negative 2. And the opposite of negative 2 is just positive 2. So I'm rewriting this problem as negative 3 plus 2, and it means the exact same thing as what I had up here. But when we saw that first problem, that looks really messy and tricky to figure out because there's two negative signs, there's a lot going on. So whenever I see subtraction, I just change it to addition with the opposite integer. So we want to figure out what this is now. If we locate negative 3 on the number line, right here, we're going to have to subtract negative 2. But we just said that that's the same as just adding positive 2. Well, if we're going to add positive 2, that means we're going to move 2 spaces to the right. So from negative 3, I'm going to count 1, 2 to the right, and I'm left with negative 1. Therefore, the answer to my original problem will be negative 1. So we're going to try to rewrite these problems using addition and then solve them. And you can use the number line to help you if you need it. Go ahead and pause the video and try your best with this. For 9 minus 7, we can think about if we want to rewrite this as addition, we would have 9 plus the opposite of 7, which is negative 7. So if I'm adding numbers with different signs, I take their difference, so 9 minus 7 is 2, and then I keep the sign of the larger absolute value. There was more positive things here because 9 is the larger absolute value, so my answer is 2. Or we could have just talked about how if we have 9 and we subtract 7, we'd be moving 7 spaces to the left and we end up with 2. In my next problem, I have negative 9 minus 7. I'm going to rewrite this as negative 9 plus, and I'm going to take the opposite of 7, which is negative 7. So now I'm taking two numbers that I'm adding together that have the same sign. So remember we learned above for adding integers, if the signs are the same, add them and keep their sign. So 9 plus 7 is 16, and since these were both negatives, my answer is actually negative 16. In our next example, we have negative 9 minus negative 7. So I'm going to rewrite it with a plus sign, and that means I need to add the opposite. So the opposite of negative 7 is 7. Here, I'm doing negative 9 plus 7, so I'm adding two numbers with different signs. So I need to take their difference. 9 minus 7 is 2. The sign of the number that has the largest absolute value would be a negative because 9's absolute value is larger than 7's. So my answer would be negative 2. Let's look at that one on the number line. If I was at negative 9 and I needed to subtract negative 7, that's the same as adding 7. So I would have counted 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 spaces to the right, and that's how I ended up at negative 2. Finally, I have 9 minus negative 7. When I will see subtraction, I can rewrite it as addition with the opposite integer. So the opposite of negative 7 is positive 7, and now we just have 9 plus 7, and we know that that is 16. They were both positive, so it's just a positive 16.